Hello everyone, today I would like to talk about the results of a paper I've been working on with my supervisor. We have been working on applying a fairly recent class of neural networks based on the concept called curriculum learning to the prediction of lung cancer cases. In this presentation, I'll try to explain the basic ideas of curriculum learning and how it compares to other standard machine learning techniques in the context of lung cancer prediction. To start, I don't think much of a point needs to be made for why we're interested in the prediction of lung cancer. Back in 2019, it was estimated that over 220,000 cases of lung cancers will have been diagnosed in the US alone, resulting in an estimated death count of over 140,000. This high incidence, combined with a 5-year relative survival rate of only 19%, means that lung and bronchus cancers are generally regarded as the type of cancer responsible for the most deaths. If we look at small cell lung cancers in particular, which account for around 15% of lung cancer cases, we see that its aggressive nature contributes to a 5-year survival rate almost 4 times lower than that of lung cancer overall, at only 6%. The high incidence and low survival rates of lung cancer has necessitated research into its early detection and diagnosis, where it can be more easily treated. Indeed, it has been shown that preemptive screenings for lung cancer using CT scans decrease the lung cancer mortality rate by around 20%. While physical screenings are great, they can be expensive, and so there also have been consistent efforts in the building of computer-based predictive models for lung cancer incidence. Using these computer-based systems, individuals at a high risk of lung cancer are able to be identified by the model and given priority for physical screens. Even so, not much effort has been directed to the prediction of small cell lung cancer in particular, where the mortality rate is much higher. With this in mind, our goal was to develop a predictive model for small cell lung cancer incidence. While we could have gone with the standard machine learning techniques for binary classification, we wanted to try something a bit different. If we have a look at current predictive techniques, we see that data has traditionally been presented to classification algorithms in 2 different ways. One approach will be to present all the data at once, as is the case for decision tree and logistic regression models, where the entire training dataset is fit to the model. A popular alternative approach has been to present the data in a random order, something you might see in neural networks or incremental implementations of random forest and Gaussian mixture models. While these options work well in most cases, a recent technique known as curriculum learning takes a unique and intuitive approach to how the data should be presented to the model. In curriculum learning, the key idea is to present the data to the classifier in order of quote-unquote difficulty. Easily classifiable instances in the training data are presented first, while harder, more ambiguous instances are presented later. The motivation here is that learning in any context is much more efficient when easy ideas are presented first, followed by harder ideas that build upon the easier ones. As an example, say that we had a predictive model which we wanted to train to distinguish between pictures of different 2-dimensional shapes. In a curriculum learning framework, we would start off by training the classifier with easy instances of shapes. We might give it some pictures of equilateral triangles, squares and circles, which are all easily distinguishable from one another. Once this classifier performs well enough on these data points, we'd move on and train the model on new instances where identification might be a bit harder. We might now give it some pictures of ovals, rectangles, and triangles where the side lengths are not the same. Again, the hope here is that by training the model in order of difficulty, harder instances will only be seen by the model when it already has some training, increasing the learning value of these harder instances and leading to a better overall model. We decided to adopt this curriculum learning approach and apply it to the case of small cell lung cancer prediction. In particular, we modified the stochastic gradient descent algorithm of a standard neural network so that data batches are given to the optimizer in order of increasing difficulty, and then fit this modified neural network to the data. We then compared the performance of this curriculum classifier to standard machine learning techniques for binary classification. In order to fit these models, we decided to use data from the National Cancer Institute's Prostate, Lung, Colorectal and Ovarian, or PLCO, cancer screening trial. Over the course of the study, social demographic data was collected on roughly 150,000 participants. Most importantly, small cell lung cancer diagnoses during the trial were recorded for each participant. While the comprehensiveness of the PLCO trials provided a selection of over 200 potential predictive variables, the main predictors of interest were responses to the baseline questionnaire. In particular, 2 sets of predictors were selected for each model. The first experimental set contained variables in the questionnaire which were thought to be good indicators of small cell lung cancer, while the second machine-chosen set contained questionnaire variables which had the highest importance weights in a random forest model fit to the lung cancer data. Here you can see the variables for each predictor set. Both sets contain key variables such as age, total years smoked, and total pack years smoked. On the other hand, the experimental predictors focused on the history of bronchitis and heart attacks, while the machine-chosen predictors focused on histories of hypertension, X-ray screening, and aspirin intake. As for the machine learning techniques considered, 5 different model types were considered in addition to curriculum learning. Tree-based classifiers such as decision trees and random forests were considered alongside logistic regression and standard neural networks, in addition to an ensemble classifier combining the random forest, logistic regression, and standard neural network models. For model evaluation, the area under the ROC curve, as calculated using fourfold cross-validation, was used. Recall that the ROC curve describes the performance of a classifier as its discriminatory threshold is varied. We start with a false positive rate on the x-axis and sensitivity on the y-axis, and then start plotting false positive rates against sensitivity across different discriminatory thresholds. For low thresholds, there's a low false positive rate, but also low sensitivity. And as this threshold is increased, sensitivity increases, but so does the false positive rate. So the ROC curve basically summarizes this relationship between sensitivity and false positive rates, and the corresponding area under this curve provides a good measure for the performance of the model, where areas closer to 1 indicate better discriminatory ability compared to areas closer to 0.5. Here you can see the ROC curves for the 6 small cell lung cancer models considered when the experimental predictor set was used. While all models had favorable performances, it is clear that the highlighted ROC curve for the curriculum classifier is noticeably extended out compared to the corresponding ROC curve for the regular neural network, indicating that the curriculum learning scheme improved the performance of the neural network. If we now plot the areas under these curves, we'll get something like this. The curriculum classifier, shown by the rightmost bar, is clearly seen to outperform all other model types, with an area under the ROC curve of around 0.87. Here you can see the ROC curves for the 6 small cell lung cancer models considered, where the machine-chosen predictor set was used instead. This time, it was a bit harder to see the differences in the ROC curves, but if we plot the areas under these curves, we can again see that the curriculum classifier, again shown by the rightmost bar, outperforms all the other model types, with an area under the ROC curve again being around 0.87. Although using a machine-chosen predictor set decreased the gap in performance between the curriculum classifier and the remaining models, it is still interesting to see that the curriculum-based neural network still significantly outperformed the regular neural network. This increased performance given by a curriculum-based scheme not only has an intuitive explanation, as was covered before, but also has been justified in the literature, where in particular it has been shown that curriculum learning smooths out the cost function, making it easier to find global minimums. We can illustrate this point using our earlier example, where we wanted the classifier to distinguish between images of different shapes. In the regular case, if we give the entire dataset at once to our predictive model, as is the case with most standard machine learning techniques, then the cost function we need to optimize over to find the correct model parameters might not be convex, and so could have many local minimums. Of course, we want to find the global minimum, indicated by the blue point here, but in this case, this may not be possible. If the starting location is far away enough, then the optimization algorithm may only lead us to the nearest local minimum, which we don't want. In the curriculum learning-based scheme, we start off by only providing easy instances to the predictive model. As mentioned before, it turns out that in many cases, this results in a smoothed version of the cost function from before. By training the model on these easy instances, we can easily find the global minimum of the smoothed cost function, indicated by the red point. This global minimum can now be used as the new starting point when we fit the model to the whole dataset containing harder instances. As with before, the cost function may not be convex, but the hope is that the global minimum of the smoothed cost function would have brought us close enough to the global minimum of the original cost function so that if we were to use the orange point as a starting point, then we would correctly converge to the global minimum of the original cost function, using our standard optimization algorithm. To summarize, what we have shown that curriculum learning-based classifiers are a viable alternative to standard machine learning algorithms. It should be noted that the small cell lung cancer models developed for this dataset may have limited generalizability to participants outside the demographics of the POCO trial participants. In any case, high-performing models for small cell lung cancer incidence were found, where the curriculum learning paradigm was applied and showed to be reasonably competitive with standard classification models.